So skeuomorphic design, okay? If we're going for accuracy here, okay, then you can toggle on and off. If we're going to make a photorealistic version of this watch, right, you can toggle your guides on and off by pressing Command::. Oh, I have a keylogger. Hold on. Let's turn this on. Keycaster. Is it working? It is. So you guys can see what keystrokes I'm pressing down on the bottom here.
Nice. Thank you.
Okay. So Command::, right? That'll hide or show kind of those guides. And then I'm going to pull some guides down to give myself a general idea of the main shapes. And then I'm just gonna come over now. Here's one thing that I recommend: work as close to your source material as possible. And I'll show you a little trick here in a minute that I find really useful. I'm gonna focus right down in here. Okay. And so the other thing that you can do is you can go to View Guides and you can lock your guides, and then you don't accidentally move them or select them or whatever. Now, if I want this to stay in place, I'm going to press Command:2, okay, and what you'll see is what that does is it locks it in the Layers panel. So it's right here, right? So that's locked. You can unlock it, you can lock it, that little deal there. All right, so we've got that. I can't click on this anymore, okay? That's going to give me some basic ideas. I'm going to come down and I'm going to give myself the top of this lug, okay? But I'm going to unlock this for one particular reason here, is I want another copy of it so that I don't have to sit here and just measure everything. I'm going to throw this up here so that I can also get some widths of some things. So if I come up here and I get this lug, okay. Right. And tracing over the top is going to be kind of a problem anyway, because you tend to cover everything and you're not allowed to do it anyway. So I'm just going to grab some of these kind of widths. Okay. And then we can come down and grab some of those. And so you can use these guides from the top and the bottom to kind of give yourself measurements, right? Especially in things that are, on things that are symmetrical, or at least they're perfect circles and squares. All you need is an XY measurement to kind of know how big it is. Okay, so let's start here. I'm going to go right up in the corner, and I'm going to grab the top edge of this. Hold Shift until I get down to the bottom. And it looks like I might be a little bit off, so I'm going to move that guide. I'm going to go to Ruler Guides, Unlock Guides, and I'm going to grab this guide, move that down a little bit. Okay, let's grab this circle. Let's lock our guides again. Okay, now I'm just going to do this right now. So Shift, click with the eyedropper tool. Now this is where you need to decide. You can start on highlights and add midtones and darker values. You can start in your shadows and you can add highlights and midtones. I like to start in midtones and then add highlights and shadows. Just for some reason that makes more sense to me, but I don't really believe that there's a right or a wrong answer. But basically we're going to go like that, okay? And then I'm going to go copy, paste in front, and I'll bring this inside to my next guide, which is the start of the face of the watch. And so we've started here. Now, this is where a lot of people don't see close enough, okay? Just in this little section here, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least concentric circles or changes in value. Do not try to do that with a radial gradient, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to make most of this with shapes. Okay, try to make as much of this with shapes as you possibly can, and it'll just make things a ton better. Okay, and so I'm going to grab this outer shape here, and there is a general kind of, you can kind of see now up here it gets darker, right? Down here it gets a little bit brighter. Over here it's brighter. And so I'm going to start looking at that, and I'm going to go copy, paste in front, and I'm going to come inside just a little bit like that. And I'm just going to start working on, some of this. So for right now, I am going to, I'm going to do a draw inside, but I'm going to shift this to a little bit different color. I could eyedrop this, but I can also just come over and I can say it's a little bit richer and a little bit darker. Okay. Again, Command H will hide and show your guidelines so you can kind of see what's going on. Okay. And so now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to focus on this S curve. There's an S curve that does some interesting things down in here. There's another one that's less aggressive over here. There's another one that's over here. And what you're seeing is it, let me zoom in here. Okay. You're seeing this thing, it goes down, it curves, and it comes up like this. Okay. And that is because of the changes in direction on that surface. Okay, that surface is curving on the edges and then is flat and then curves on the edges again. As it curves, it's going to turn towards or away from the light. And so things that face towards the light get brighter, things that face away from the light get darker. And if you have a shadow or a reflected specular highlight or something, and then the surface changes direction, it's going to bend that shadow or that specular highlight or whatever, right? And so that's why these bends at the edges of these things are indicating to us that there's a change in direction in the path, okay? And so I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna grab our watch here. And this is a little trick that I like to do. I'm gonna bring this over here like this, and then because I get really easily distracted, I'm going to mask out everything except for the part that I'm working on by pressing Command 7 like that, okay? And then now I've got this little window, okay, where I can come in and I can kind of use this as a measurement, but use this as a reference so I don't have to look from here all the way over to here and then all the way back. I can just look back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, make little micro adjustments, okay? Still not tracing over the top. So I'm going to grab this here. Let's turn Command H back on, okay? And I can see that it's contained inside of this circle, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a draw inside, okay? So I'm going to go draw inside, okay? And then I'm just going to start with a big shape. So I'm just going to shift click on my reference here, and I'm going to pen tool really raggedly, just something like this. Okay, now let's zoom in here, and let's try to adjust this as much as possible. I'm going to switch to my white arrow tool, which is A. Okay, I'm going to bring this down here. Shift C to switch to my convert anchor point tool to kind of round that out. Okay, A to grab the individual anchor points here. Bring this down. Let's curve that. I'm going to bring this just off. We'll curve it out. Okay, I'm going to grab this one and use the corner widget tool to just round it out a little bit. Okay, now that is way darker than I want it for a couple of reasons. It actually looks like there might be some of these stacked on top of each other. Okay, and so I've got another one up here that does the same thing, but it's lighter. Okay, and so I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to alt click and drag. Okay, not alt click and drag because it's inside of a clipping mask, but I am going to copy paste in front, okay, and I'm going to drag this over, and I'm going to change it to this lighter color, and rotate it. Okay, and it's going to be up a little bit higher. Okay, and then I'll just make whatever adjustments I need to make. Let's give ourselves our corners again. Oops, come back. This one up here like this, and that does kind of curve in, but it falls off pretty sharply. Good night. Okay, so if I keep clicking on this thing, I'm just going to press Command 2 so I don't keep clicking on it. It just locks it, right? Okay, there, and then this is going to come over. And how far does that go? Much higher than my mask allows me to see. So it looks like it goes on for a while, so we'll deal with that in a bit. Okay, so I've got this one and this one. I'm going to round those out again, okay? But it's hard to see because it's pixelated, but that's a fuzzy edge. So I'm going to go into Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, okay? And I'm going to give myself a little bit of a fuzzy edge there. Now, the amount that you blur this will kind of be how fuzzy or how sharp that is, okay? But this isn't a perfectly mirrored surface. It's a highly glossed surface, but it's not a mirror. And so there's going to be some diffusion on the edge of that thing. And it's not chrome, so you're not getting the highest value contrast between your shadows and your highlights, but it is, you know, a medium to high kind of value contrast. Okay, so I get that. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. The nice thing about Effect is you can also just up here at the top and it'll just apply whatever the settings were for the last time you used an effect. And I can just go like that. Okay, I'm close, but I see that this kind of washes out a little bit and this kind of washes out a little bit. And then I'm going to zoom out some and I'm going to check over here. And it seems like it gets slightly warmer in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into Draw Inside. So I'm going to grab that clip group and I'm going to select the ellipse that I was using as my clipping path. Very important that you only select the single object. And then I'm going to change it to Draw Inside again, okay? And I'm going to change my color here to something ridiculous just so I can see what's going on. And I'm going to make a spot here in the middle. And I'm going to Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur, but quite a bit this time. Something like that. Okay. Now let's blend it. It's going to get a little bit richer, but it's still on the warm side. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to kind of keep this kind of in my browner tones. I'm going to drop it to be a little bit darker and kind of heavily saturated. And then when I go into blending, I'm going to try Multiply first. And that might be a little bit too dark. So let's try Overlay. And that's a little bit too saturated. So I'm going to go back to Multiply and I'm going to drop my opacity. So I'm just kind of hinting at that. Kind of low opacity there. And for some reason, in the most recent update of After Effects, like the blur goes away. You got to go turn it on and turn it off. Okay, but now I have this blurred shape, okay, and I'm going to make a copy of it, and I'm going to bring it over here, and I'm going to change it to be white, and I'm going to change Multiply to Overlay, and change opacity up a little bit, and then I'm going to go back to my thing and turn my Gaussian blur back on. Okay, do that again up here. And that's definitely, let's Command H so we can see what's going on. That's definitely too bright. So let's lower that down a little bit. Okay, so I feel like that's a little bit closer. Okay, I'm getting closer here, but I have another. It gets darker on the inside and then it kind of fades and gets brighter. I think there's another shape. Okay, so I'm going to grab this, I'm going to grab my main circle, and this is where you might start to say like, ooh, I've got so many layers, and you are correct, right? And this is where you need to kind of start naming stuff. So I'm going to say main case, okay, so that it kind of know what's going on. And I'm going to say case inside, and so, you know, I might even come in and you know, fuzzy high. Fuzzy high. You don't have to do this for every single thing, but it is kind of helpful to get a general idea, and then you don't have to go search things. S-curve right. S-curve dark, right. Okay. So I've got some different things there. Did I?
I think you accidentally hit.
Oh, did I make a copy of it?
Or you were never actually named the thing.
Oh, I just pressed the button a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Let's.
so I think it turned it to the default.
There we go.
Oh, I hit because one of them was D. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna take this main case, right, and I'm just gonna make a copy of that. Drag it down here, make a copy. Okay, and I'm gonna call this case inner, and I'm gonna put it on top of inside, and then I'm gonna make it be darker here. So let's look at our reference. It's darker. So it's maybe darker everywhere except for where we have this highlight and kind of this richer mid-tone. So I'm going to make it all one color, and then I'm going to add in some stuff. And so let's come in here and let's just eyedrop that. It helps if it is selected. And if you don't have draw inside on right now. Okay, so draw inside, here we go. And then let's grab this middle value. Okay, black arrow tool again. And come down. Just barely inside. Okay, now I'm going to switch to draw inside. Okay, and I'm just going to look at this and I'm going to say, okay, what am I seeing here? Well, I'm seeing that like down here it washes out a little bit, over here it gets richer, and over here it gets brighter. Okay, so I can do that, right? And I can come in and I can say, let's give ourselves a really nice kind of bright yellow, not a greenish yellow. Okay, and let's apply Gaussian blur to that, and then let's blend it. Screen's probably the wrong way to go. Okay, so let's go back to screen, and this is too saturated. Okay, and then let's turn our, now if you, inside of your appearance panel, if you click on this, then you can re-edit that effect without having to delete it or add a new effect on top of it. Did you ever hand up? Oh, no, okay, sorry. Out of my peripheral. Yeah, go ahead.
So I know you said like not to use gradients, but what about like watches that have like a large range?
No, I didn't say not to use gradients. I said that most of the time you're probably seeing something other than a gradient. But there are definitely times when you can use gradients. Yeah. Yeah, like I'm seeing some gradients here, right? But I'm also seeing some shapes layered over the top of those gradients. And so, you know, there's kind of a lot going on, but you use gradients, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with gradients. But I also think some Gaussian blur could do this as well.
Do you have any tips of like knowing when to use which?
I will probably, if I were to do this 6 times, I will probably do it 6 different ways. So just, you know, go with whatever you feel like at the time, and then it'll probably be fine. It's too green. Okay. All right. So questions so far? Do you guys kind of see how this is sort of developing? And I'm just kind of going, you know, one at a time, incrementally, little bit by bit, right? And one of the big things is, you know, I'm gonna lock. Now here's this, right? So I've got my case. I'm gonna make a case layer. Okay, and I'm gonna take this and this. I'm going to put it in my case layer, okay? And then I'm going to take this one, and that's my face main, okay? And I'm going to make a face layer, okay? And that's going to be on top of my case, and I'm going to put this inside here like that, okay? And the nice thing about doing it this way is now I can go, I'm not working on the case right now, and so I can just lock it, right? I can just lock it down. Okay, what else would you guys like to see on this watch that would be helpful? Yeah.
Patterns.
Okay, so not on this watch, but patterns just in general and how to make them, or what is it?
Sorry, I guess, yeah, not that
No, that's fine. What are you trying to make with patterns?
Like on the inside of my watch, it's full of little studs.
Okay.
Like, not diamond type, like shiny, just little like squares.
Do you know what your watch is called?
Psycho, S-E-I-K-O.
S-C...
S-E-I.
S-E-I... Oh, Seiko.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's gold with a white inside. And it's kind of square.
Is it a men's watch?
Women's.
Okay. Tell me if you see it.
I think it's that first one right there.
This one right here?
Down one.
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that have studs inside of it?
Yep.
Yeah. That.
All right, so let's look at it and let's see. Ooh, that'll be fun.
Oh,
Is that gonna be super hard?
Nothing is going to be easy, but this will be a fun one to do.
Because I was thinking if you just make that triangle shape and then like make a pattern out of it and
Mm-hmm.
then put shadows on top.
Yeah, let's take a look. I'm gonna.
That was not the answer I wanted.
You guys don't enjoy this type of stuff? I think it's awesome. All right.
It's awesome, just a little bit scary.
Intimidating, but awesome. Okay, so
we're brand new to it. You've been doing this for a while. It's good to get a little more into it.
so let's do a basic idea of what patterns are. Okay, and so I'm gonna come in here. These actually look a little bit taller to me than they are wide. If we were doing this perfectly, which why not, right? Let's come in and let's get a good measurement of this. Okay, so that's how big they are. Okay, and I'm seeing a bit of an hourglass situation. Because this pattern is so small, you don't have to do a ton of detail for it to look decent. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to kind of generally look at like what's going on kind of here in the middle, because we can color the outside a little bit. There is a line, a grid, okay? And so I'll show you how I want to do that in a minute. And then I think this is curved and there's basically kind of an X. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go like this and let's make this a little bit darker. Sorry, shift click. Okay, and I'll go copy paste in front. Okay, and then I'm going to come inside about like that. Okay. And let's make this brighter. And for the time being...
And that's how you're going to make it look like a grid, not just one color?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is I'm using one of these as a tile in my pattern.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm just gonna come in and delete this and bring this down to the center. And then because I think it's going to look better, I'm going to round those corners out. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this around. So I'm going to use my reflect tool and flip across a horizontal. And let's squish that and stretch it a little bit. And that's going to be my darker value. And I'm going to darken that just a little bit more so that we can kind of see it. And I'm not seeing much else. There's some bits, but I think we're basically there. So I will grab this, okay, and then I'm going to go to Object, Pattern, Make, Pattern, Make, okay, and that brings it into here, and that gives you this pattern tile tool kind of menu options. So let me talk about some of the options here. This is your tile editor. When you hit this, you can change the shape of this square. Okay, so this is just like, let me just make a quick example. This is exactly like old video games. Okay, and so if you've ever played Mario Brothers, the original, or Joust, or even Portal, you know, some of the more modern ones. Yeah, good. That's awesome. What you're going to see is that when something leaves the right side of this tile, it shows up on the left side of that tile. When it leaves the top of this tile, it shows up on the bottom, but it depends on which one of these buttons that you have pushed on which tiles overlap the other tiles. Okay, and if it goes, out the right side and out the bottom, then it's going to show up out the left side and out the top. And so that's kind of how this how this works. Okay, you can dim the extra tiles, and then the size of this can be created by changing what's going on. And so if we want these to be closer or further apart, you can change this. The grid type is going to shift your rows and your columns. And so if you go brick by row, then the rows, every other row shifts by whatever you have in brick offset. In this case, a half, but you could go a third if you wanted. Okay. If you go brick by column, it is the exact same thing, but vertically. Okay. So that's kind of what's going on there. Yours is a straight grid. You can also change the shape of the grid into a hexagon situation, where instead of having 4-sided tile, you have a 6-sided tile, and they still leave here and end up in the opposite one, right? When you use hex patterns, you have the ability to still go in and go hex by column, hex by row, and sometimes you can make that pattern look more seamless instead of repetitive, because most people think in grids of 4 rather than grids of 6. So, but that's basically what we're doing there. Okay, so we've got this, and I can click done. Okay, and I'm going to zoom out here. Okay, and then really basically, all we're doing here is we're going to go in, and we are going to make a shape. And then we will fill that shape with our new grid pattern there. And I can come in here if I hit S, and I can double click on my scale tool. And if I turn transform objects off and transform patterns on, then I can scale this pattern up and down by pressing the up or down keys. Okay.
What's the scale tool again?
S is the scale tool, and then when you double click on certain tools, most tools, they have a menu that's based on the inside of it. And so for this, I'm gonna leave that because we already had measured these, right?
How do you get into the menu from the shortcut?
So I only hit the shortcut like V, just so it selects that tool and I know where it is, because I always forget where the scale tool is. But then you can just double click on. So I just hit S. Without a menu open, I can hit S and it'll jump down and say, here it is, right? And it kind of highlights it for you, and then I can double click it like that. And then at this point, you're just going to look and you're just going to see that we've got a little bit of a shadow here along this upper edge, right? There's a bunch of different ways that we can do that, but I'm just going to do the simplest way, and I'm going to go copy, paste in front, and let's come inside like that. And then I'm just going to make this kind of a medium gray, and then I'm going to cut it out of itself by Alt click and drag, and then grab this shape builder tool, Shift M, and then I'm just going to go to Effect Blur Gaussian Blur, and we can blur that. Except now we run into a different problem, okay, is I have a sharp edge on one side and a fuzzy edge on another side. So I don't want a Gaussian blur. What I want to do is, what's that?
I was just going to say, you want to fix it first so that it's sharp where it needs to be, and then.
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this clear, so it has no filler stroke by hitting the / with my fill active, and then I am just going to come in and I'm going to draw a shape. Draw inside. Okay, and let's just make this really loud so we can see it. I'm just going to draw a basic shape that falls well outside of that. And so now I've got this shape, and you can see that the shape of this is being clipped by my drawn side. And so now when I go Effect Blur Gaussian Blur, the clipping mask on the outside gives me the hard edge, and the blur of that shape on the inside gives me the fade, right?
Okay.
And so then I come in on that and I multiply or overlay, and I'm seeing it in there. Now, as you guys look at this, this is what I want you to start seeing. I'm seeing a greenish tint to that shadow, okay? And so I'm going to shift this to a darker green, okay? And then I'm going to change this back to multiply, okay? And I feel like that's pretty good. And I'm going to start dropping my opacity down. Okay, and this is where, don't try to make one thing do all the things. So I hope they fix this soon. Okay, and so I have this and I like it, but I see that it's darker up here on the top and it's lighter over here on the sides. Okay, first of all, just so I don't have to deal with this.
Turn off the Gaussian blur.
In the appearance panel, you can go in and you can hit the eyeball next to whatever effects or things are there.
So like, how did it turn off in the first place?
Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah, Adobe has a glitch that came out about a year ago where as you're doing opacity changes, it kills some
That's probably have to be
things.
Give us your mark.
I'm going to go to Path Simplify just so I can reduce the number of anchor points that we have there. Great. Okay. All right. So now,
You can reduce anchor points like that?
yep, Object Path Simplify is awesome.
Yeah, how
Okay.
do you do that?
Let me do it again. Yeah, so I'm going to come in with another one, and I'm going to make this crazy, right? So there's my crazy shape. If you look at it, it's got a bunch of anchor points on it. If I go to Object, Path, Simplify, there are two things that you can do. So Simplify, and you've got this slider, and this is kind of, just a smart one. If I click on this, then it can bring up a whole menu, and I can say minimum, but I want it mostly to be smooth. You can show the original path to make sure that you're close, or no, I want all straight lines or whatever, right? And you can do that, or you can go auto simplify and do that. And so it'll reduce the number of anchor points that you have. It will also change the shape, right? So you want to do that carefully.
What was the smooth option?
Smooth is a different process. Let me finish this one. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go copy paste in front. Notice that it gets darker, right? And I have a copy of the shape on top of itself. And so now I can come in and I can control, where I'm layering it. Just like if you were to put, pieces of colored glass on top of each other, they would start kind of layering a little bit. Oh, I don't know why that's so curved. Come back here. You relax. Okay. Nope, not you. And this is where another thing can be really helpful, Command Y. And so Command Y is just going to bring up the outlines of everything, and you press Command Y to bring it back, and that's just under View Outline. But I find that to be very useful, and I use it often. Okay, and then it gets even darker, right? And so I'm going to grab this shape again in my Layers panel. This might be a good time to name things if I wasn't doing a demo here. And I'm going to make another copy of this. But this time, I'm going to turn my opacity up. Okay, but that's too, I don't like that. So I'm going to change this to overlay. And I'm going to come in and I'm just going to shift this up ever so slightly. Come on, come with me. There we go. We'll drag you up a little bit. Okay.
It's like if you hold Control or Shift or something while you're dragging it, or while you're using the arrow keys, it will move it a little faster. It jumps some.
Yeah, it steps up to increments of 10 if you hold Shift while you're doing those. Okay, and so I can kind of get that, and then I see a shape in the middle here, and so I can put this in, but I feel like it's not that green, right? So it can be a little bit darker, and then I can come in and I can apply a Gaussian blur to that shape, and then I can come in and I can go blend, and then drop down. right? And so you can start to see how you can start to control this. And I might even say, you know what, it kind of is really tight and then fades, and so I can come in here like this, and I can add a gradient to that. That just goes, 0 to 100, and I make that vertical like that, and it'll kind of fade. Right, and then you can come in and, kind of change this and say, well, I want to see it a little bit more. And once again, let's turn that back on. Okay, does that kind of help with the thing? Yeah. And so really, I'm going to Shift D again to get back out of the drawing mode. You're probably going to layer some stuff over the top of this. You've got your refracted light kind of in here like that and everything. This knob is going to be really cool. Don't get distracted by what you think is happening, and just look at the shapes.
Yeah, that's
There's a
what I was
little.
doing in my sketches.
Yeah, good,
Okay.
good.
So I was on the right track.
Yeah. And you're probably pretty close with this as well. I mean, these little things. Don't make one of those and just copy it 9 times, right? You've got 12 of those, and each one is slightly different, right? But you can make one of them and then copy that one and then make little minor adjustments to it kind of as you go. Really quick, just an easy way to kind of do that shape is you can make this guy. I'm still in gradient mode. Get out of gradient mode. There we go. So let's make this guy like this, and then I'm just gonna I'm going to draw a line, okay, and I'm gonna grab both of those and I'm gonna center them on each other like that, and then I'm gonna rotate this line 45 degrees by holding Shift, okay, and then I grab that, and I can take this line and I can flip it like so, and then I can grab this shape builder tool, cut my edges off, click, 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 and because nothing is perfect, I always round out the rectangles of things that are metal, even if it's just a little bit, and then put it on top of something else. But now I can, if you hit your eyedropper tool, you can Shift click and then Alt click, and Shift click and Alt click, and Shift click and Alt click, and Shift click and Alt click, and we're getting pretty close. And you don't need too much to this. Let me just add this and put this in the back, and then let's get, it looks like there's a kind of this orange edge. Why didn't we pick up the orange edge? I pushed the button. We'll just saturate a little bit, desaturate, come over. It's maybe a little bit warmer, not that warm. Anyway, once we get in there, then you can come in and let's round these corners as well. And we can look at this, and you can kind of see what you're seeing and make those adjustments now that you have that shape. And so I've got this. I'm going to bring it all the way to the top, right? And I can say that it's a little bit darker and a little bit brighter. And so I can come in here and I can just say, I'm just going to, because this is going to be so small, which let's make it small so we can kind of see what's going on here. Be small. Okay, and then we'll zoom in. Okay, I'm just going to come in with my pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a little line. If you hold Shift, it'll constrain to 45. Okay, and I'm just going to make this, I'm going to make this white, and I'm going to taper it to a point, and then I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to put it right here, and I'm going to blur it just a little bit. Okay, and this is where if you go to Effect, Document Effect Raster Settings, this is really important. make sure that your resolution is at 300, because if it's at 72, it'll just pixelate and be terrible. You guys will ask me that next week as your stuff looks pixelated and terrible.
On
At 300, yeah. And so as I look at this, it's got a tinge of green. There's a tinge of green there. And so I'm going to come into this and I'm going to super saturate. I'm going to shift it over to green and then I'm going to wash it out. Okay. And then I'm just going to take my black arrow tool here on the other side, and it's a little bit darker there. And so let's just see if we can achieve that by just doing multiply and then shifting our saturation. But it goes too green for me there, so I'm going to warm that up a little bit, kind of like that. Now this is going to look kind of weird, right?
Did you turn it into a shape in order to do it on both sides of it, or how did you do that?
It's just two different.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just two different lines that have that tapering. But I can say it's going to be a little bit, and so I can just throw, something like this. Let's hit D and / and then let's blur, and let's blur more, and then let's blend and drop our opacity down. It did. It will every time. Annoyingly. Okay. And so then I've got this deal. And at this point, I could turn this into a pattern if I wanted. This is definitely off. So now that I have this closer, I'm going to do that wrong. Since I had my stroke selected. There we go. That looks a lot better. Right, and then it gets a little bit darker on this side. I mean, I could just come over the top like this. And I could just go, be darker. Boom, 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 boom. 0, and blend, multiply. And just kind of tighten that up a little bit like that. And then, grab Shift Y, or Command Y again, Shift M, and cut the outside of that. Okay, and on and on. I'm still going to look at it a little bit. It looks like there's, a little bit in the middle here that's darker, a little bit here on the edge that gets a little bit more saturated. You kind of just keep going until kind of like what it looks like. And it's going to look weird up close, but then when you zoom out, it starts to look pretty decent, right? And so then I would take this, and I am going to group it because I want it to move together. And let's name that group Zelda Stone. If you guys ever played the 8-bit Zelda, that's what it looks like. And then I'm going to come over here like that. Right, and so then I've got my thing, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, some of these are a little too saturated, some of these are a little too whatever, and I can go in one at a time and kind of make my little adjustments to kind of get them going, right? And then they will also cast shadows and refract light around them in addition and so to make them look like they belong, they are raised, and so you want to make sure that you do all that stuff as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not gonna be too bad.
It's just methodical. Like, honestly, none of this is really that hard. All of it is just you looking at it and saying, what does it look like now? What does it look like now? And you just get a little bit closer. So imagine that you're going on a big, long journey towards a mountain, right? And anything that gets you closer to that mountain, those are the steps that you need to take. And those are going to be different steps as your journey changes and as you kind of are closer to the mountain than further away. But everything is just, how can I get closer? How can I get closer? And one of the main things that I want you guys to recognize is that you are layering shapes on top of shapes, and that one shape does one thing. Don't make one shape try to be the highlights and the midtones and the whatever, right? Or try to be the sharp edge and the fuzzy edge. One shape does one thing, and then you layer them. Yeah.
Is there a way to do like diagonal guidelines?
Yes, you can do diagonal guidelines. So if you throw a guideline down, so I'm gonna show guides, And then I'm going to unlock guides. And then I'm going to select some of them. And then I'm going to hit my rotate tool. And you can rotate them. And then you can go back and you can show and hide and lock and whatever
What is
else.
the focal point for that? Like, how does it determine that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know. I don't use diagonal guides that much, so it's probably whatever is selected or something. To be honest, I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have a Roman numerals on watches? Do you suggest like type or
Um,
rectangles
yeah, so Roman numerals, you could try to find a font that might get you started, because it's really just X and capital I, right? And V or whatever. So you could do that, but in reality, it's not that hard to just make them, you know. And so, yeah, you know, so do the same thing that we did before, where you throw down some guides, and that'll give you kind of your basic measurements. Nice thing is they're symmetrical, so if we wanted to, we could just make half. Okay, and so I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to say they're going to be this tall, and let's make them some kind of color that we can see and be on top. It's probably on some layer that is not. There we go. Okay, and then I'll bring this down and let's make sure that they're as wide as they need to be. And then I would just grab anchor points with your white arrow tool, shift those over so that they match, right? And then you can just grab that one, hit O, you know, click in the middle. You gotta have the whole thing selected instead of one of the things selected. So we'll select the whole thing. We'll hit O, double click, make a copy, you know, and that's gonna be pretty close. And then I'm gonna go in, select both of these, combine them with my shape builder tool. I'm gonna round out the edges of the outside, and then you just start kind of building from there. But yeah, generally speaking, they're not super hard to make.
mine are just like really thin, so I using a pen tool.
Pen tool's fine. Yeah, I mean, if you zoom in enough, anything is a shape, but they'd have to be really thin to just be a stroke. So, because they're going to have depth and everything else. Okay, we got 5 more minutes. Other questions that I can help you with or show you, or I can just keep working on stuff? Yeah.
Leather.
Say that again.
The leather.
Leather, yeah, so leather bands. Mostly, a lot of that is going to be done next week. And so, let's see. Okay, that doesn't have much of a texture at all. We're gonna do textures next week, but what I want you to focus on with your leather is how close can you get it with your highlights and your midtones and your shadows, right? So get the shape correct, get your highlights and midtones and shadows. And so in this one, right, let's find something that has a little bit more texture to it. There we go. Where are we? Come over. Be gone. All right. So most beginners will see the texture detail first and get distracted by that. When in reality, a lot of what is going on is, if you look at this, the stitching is pinching the surface. And so the surface is kind of puffed. It tightens at the edge, it's puffed up, it's pushed down and pinched, and then it puffs up again. And you've got some shadow on either side of the stitching and highlight as this faces the light, and a little bit of darker midtone on that side that's showing you the change in direction on the path. And then generally speaking, and this would be a really good example of when I would use a gradient, from here to here is a really subtle gradient change that goes from a lighter midtone to a darker midtone across the whole thing. and then we've got some creases and some pinches. So I would get all of those creases, all those pinches, all those changes in direction, fuzzy and sharp, get all your stitching. You see the edge of the hole? Parts of this are facing towards the light, parts of this are facing away from the light, and parts of this are showing the kind of walls of that hole, the walls of that cylinder, right? And so I'd get all those shapes down. I would get all the text. I would get all the shapes down. I'd get all of the highlights, shadows, midtones, all the gradients, all the Gaussian blurs and everything, all the stitching, which is not a dotted line. If we look really closely, what you're seeing is it's like nothing, just a bunch of pixels. So then you got to go to, okay, well, how is stitching made? Stitching is made by taking thread and wrapping it, so it's this kind of like corkscrew of stuff. And you can sort of see that where I've got a little bit brighter here, a little bit brighter here, and then it goes into a hole. So it's like, you know, it's going and then it goes into a hole, right? And so if we're looking down on it, so this part is going to be brighter. This part is going to start to get darker as it faces away from the light. As we look at this vertically, it's going to have a little bit of a football shape, right? And you're going to have your highlight here in the middle, and you're going to have your shadows here on the sides. And so you can kind of get that. And then you're going to have, let me just brighten this up a little bit. You're going to have a couple little indications that it's spinning, right? And then you'll have it get darker as it goes into the hole, and then it will cast a shadow on the outside of it because it's raised, right? So if you get all of that stuff, then texture will just be kind of like a little finishing touch. And there's some heavy texture on this, and I wouldn't use one texture. I would probably use 5 or 6 different textures. I'd use one to kind of break up this kind of lighter orange. I'd use another one to kind of break up this kind of burnished brown. I'd use another one that's going to kind of give me some of this like washed out yellow across the top. You kind of keep layering those types of things, but don't touch texture at all until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Okay. All right. We will see you guys on Tuesday, where I will pull up your work and tell you what's wrong with it. Woo!